is going to hell down here in Texas.
Oh, yeah. The beautiful sounds of Shepherd of Fire playing your boy in. What's up, everybody? This is the boy, Big Bad Bob, otherwise known as Rob Clark. This is episode number 239 of the Lone Gunman Podcast. Man, what a beautiful summer day to be stuck in the lab, giving you all what you want, which is another fun-loving episode of the Lone Gunman Podcast. And I wouldn't have it any other way. I wouldn't want to be anywhere else. So let's do it. So on this episode here, we are going to be taking a deep dive, if you will, into FBI employee, that's New Orleans office, FBI employee William Walter, and his various allegations that have potential to be very, very damning to the FBI. But before we do, let's hear a word from our sponsor. Big Bad Bob here with you for Silk City hot sauces. Why Silk City? Because this hot sauce comes to you directly from Patterson, New Jersey, also known as Silk City. These hot sauces are 100% natural, gluten-free, vegan, contain no chemicals, fillers, dyes, or junk. Everything is packed into recyclable glass containers because glass doesn't leach weird flavors into the product. All other hot sauces are sourced in small batches from locally bought fresh peppers. It's all about the pepper, people. I'm telling you. Your boy, Big Bad Bob, loves his food like he loves his women. Hot and spicy, but not so hot you can't eat them. So, if you love yourself some sauce and you're tired of trying to transform your bland meat into something edible, with the tip of a jar, you will transform your life forever. Head over to silkcityhotsauce.com, place an order, and upon checkout, enter the code GUNMAN, that's GUNMAN, for 20% off of your entire order. You won't regret it. Thank me later. Peace. Oh, yes. Well, thank you, Rob, for that beautiful, informative commercial. And look, thank you again to everybody who supports the show, monetarily supports the show by ordering yourself some hot sauce from Silk City Hot Sauce. Head over there, put yourself together a little order, and upon checkout, enter the code GUNMAN, that's GUNMAN, for 20% off your entire order. Not only do you save a little money, but you also get some damn good hot sauce, and you help support this show here. So any support is much appreciated. Much appreciated. All right, let's get right into William Walter of the New Orleans FBI office. So during the early morning hours, okay, for November the 17th, 1963, The teletype machine in the FBI office in New Orleans began to rattle away. William S. Walter, a young security clerk, walked over to the machine. Walter was alone in the office. His regular working hours were from midnight until 8 a.m. He read the message, which was addressed to all SACs, that's special agents in charge of the various offices of the FBI, and noted that it came from the Bureau Director, J. Edgar Hoover. The message read urgent, and Walter read it very carefully. It was headed Threat to Assassinate President Kennedy in Dallas, Texas, November 22 23, 1963. Miscellaneous information concerning the short message revealed that the FBI had received information that there might be an attempt to assassinate President Kennedy during his trip to Dallas on November 22nd or 23rd, 1963. The SACs were instructed to immediately contact all CIS, as criminal informants, and all PCIs, as potential criminal informants, and all, quote, logical, racial, and hate group informants in order to investigate the threat. Walter called Special Agent in Charge Maynard, who was charged with the responsibility of running the New Orleans office. Maynard ordered Walter to immediately call the various special agents who ran CIs and PCIs. Walter woke up 5 special agents to read the teletype message to them. He then wrote their names upon the face of the teletype. Soon Maynard arrived at the office to take charge, and at 8 o'clock in the morning, Walter left the office. The response to the teletype demonstrated that the New Orleans office considered the message to be of unusual significance. 5 days later, early in the afternoon of November the 22nd, 1963, William Walter was in a barber shop getting his hair cut. A radio broadcast was interrupted with news that the president had just been shot in Dallas. Walter raced back to the FBI office to reread the teletype. He showed it to various special agents and asked, "How could this have happened? We had 5 days' notice." Later that day, Walter typed a copy of the teletype and wrote across the face of the copy the names of the 5 special agents he had called on November 17th. Soon after the assassination, an FBI directive ordered the New Orleans office of the Bureau to direct the various agents who had conducted interviews regarding the assassination to re-examine those reports. The object was to make sure that there were no conflicts with Hoover's public position that Oswald was the lone assassin. All information that might, quote, embarrass the Bureau was to be deleted from new reports then being prepared for the Warren Commission, and the original documents were to be destroyed. Walter later decided to look at the original teletype again. Alone in the office, he checked the appropriate file drawer and discovered that the teletype had disappeared. The only written proof of its existence was the copy that Walter had made and taken home. When Senator Richard Schweiker, then a member of the Church Committee, began an inquiry into the assassination of President Kennedy in 1975, Walter flew to Washington, D.C. to provide him with the information in his possession. Schweiker's committee subsequently urged that the Senate appoint a committee to conduct a full-scale investigation of the murder. Walter lives in Louisiana, where he is currently the vice president of a bank. He is prepared to testify before the HSCA Committee on Assassinations regarding the authenticity of the teletype message. That copy, never before made public, is published here for the first time since it was prepared by Walter on November the 22nd, 1963. And it reads as thus. 2. All SACs from the director. Threat to assassinate President Kennedy in Dallas, Texas, November 22-23, 1963. Misinformation concerning info has been received by the Bureau. Bureau has determined that a militant revolutionary group may attempt to assassinate, President Kennedy on his proposed trip to Dallas, Texas, November 22-23, 1963. All receiving office should immediately contact all CIs, PCIs, logical, racial, and hate group informants to determine if any basis for threat. Bureau should be kept advised of all developments by teletype. Some, I don't know what that means. Subme FD 302s and LHM. Other office has been advised and please no Dallas Orleans. CTTITU clear at, and then written on here is the names of the 5 agents that Walter woke up that morning and let them know. That would be Agent Warren DeBreeze. You may have heard of him before. Agent Wall. Agent Cock. That's Milton Cock. I've heard of him before. Maynard and Gilman. And these are all special agents in the New Orleans field office. On let's see. March 26, 1968, Nashville, Tennessee. What's up, Doug? I, William S. Walter, make the following free and voluntary statement to Special Agents Robert Jensen and William Bulkins, who have both identified themselves to me as representatives of the FBI. I have been informed of my rights, but do not wish to sign a form indicating that I have been so advised. A copy of this form was furnished to me. I was also informed of the provisions of Title 1S, Section 1001 of the U.S. Code. I understand what I've been told. I am a former FBI employee who handled clerical duties in the New Orleans office. Among my duties was the handling of teletype messages that came in during my working hours. I recall that sometime during my tour of duty, midnight to 8 a.m. on November 17, 1963, I received a teletype from FBI headquarters. This was a conference teletype sent to New Orleans and other southern offices. I do not remember any other offices, nor can I recall the specific title of this teletype. I do know this teletype contained information to the effect that there might be an assassination attempt on President Kennedy in Texas. I do not recall any specific town in Texas being mentioned, but I do know that Texas was indicated. I am not mistaken about my receipt of this teletype. I also know that other clerical employees know of the receipt of this teletype. Some of these clerical employees are no longer employed by the Bureau. I do not want to identify these employees at this time. I was also asked if I had furnished information regarding my receipt of a teletype on November 17, 1963, regarding an alleged attempt on the life of President Kennedy to anyone else. I have furnished information regarding this to my attorney, 3 representatives of the U.S. Attorney's Office in New Orleans, and 2 Special Agents Jensen and Malkins. I have not furnished any information regarding this teletype to Mark Lane, Jim Garrison, or any representative of their offices. I also wish to make the statement that I was not specifically asked while in the Jacksonville office of the FBI whether I actually received the teletype on November 17, 1963, regarding an alleged attempt on the life of President Kennedy. I denied while in the Jacksonville office furnishing any information to Mark Lane. I said that I told Mark Lane that I never received any such message or communication. All right, so this guy's clearly on the side of the FBI. He's not trying to stick it to the FBI. In fact, he's saying here that he never told Mark Lane anything. He even denied uh, getting the teletype to Mark Lane. And this, I'm sure he was approached um, by Jim Garrison's office. So instead of going to Garrison, and remember, this is in 1968, folks, that he's furnishing this. He's walking uh, in Nashville to the Memphis. Well, he's given this affidavit, or whatever you want to call it, to representatives of the Memphis Bureau or Memphis field office of the FBI in Nashville. And he talks about a deposition in the Jacksonville office, of which I do not know the date, and I do not have any uh, corroborating documents. I cannot find anything on it. But he is alluding to it here. So he goes on to say, I wish to repeat that I did receive, as I said before, on November 17, 63, a teletype directed to New Orleans and other southern offices which contained information to the effect of someone had said there might be an assassination attempt on President Kennedy in Texas. I am not mistaken about this. I've read this statement consisting of this and 2 other pages. I agree with it, and it is the truth. Signed, William S. Walter, in the presence of special agents, yada, 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 right? Memphis field office. So we have here, a guy who is definitely trying to do the right thing in his eyes, which is not feed conspiracy buffs any information. He wants to clear the record. He's voluntarily going to the FBI to make statements such as this for the record. Now, we all know, and it's been discussed on this show before, about J. Edgar Hoover's FBI. They did not want to look incompetent. They did not want to look like fools. Then they certainly did not want the blame for the Kennedy assassination laid at their feet. If it got out that the FBI had knowledge of an assassination attempt on Kennedy in Texas on that specific date and didn't do anything to prevent it, well, it looks pretty goddamn bad on the FBI. Pretty bad. Of which they would not have wanted that public knowledge. And it wouldn't have been. And it wasn't. You don't see anybody else saying this. Nobody else saying the same information. So in response to Walters walking in to Nashville and giving the special agents there a voluntary statement about receiving this teletype, the FBI does their due diligence for their own records and tracks down Mr. Harry Maynor, former special agent in charge of the New Orleans office of the FBI in November of 1963. Now, this time, March 28, 68, Maynor is a security director for General Telephone and Electronic Service Corporation in New York, New York. Big money, big money. So on March 27th, 68, Mr. Harry Maynor advised that he is a former special agent of the FBI who in the past served as the special agent in charge of the New Orleans FBI office. He advised that he acted in this capacity in November 63 when Kennedy was murdered in Dallas, Texas. Mr. Maynor advised that he recalls one William S. Walter as a clerical employee of the New Orleans FBI office in November of 1963. His actual position was that of security patrol clerk. His duties included the sending and receiving of teletype messages to and from other FBI field offices and FBI headquarters in Washington, D.C. All right, so far we've got corroboration from the man in charge in New Orleans that this fellow, William Walter, was the security patrol clerk who handled teletypes. Okay, so we've established that much so far. Regarding allegations made by William S. Walter that a communique from FBI headquarters in D.C. was received at the New Orleans FBI office on November 17th, 1963, stating in effect, there would be an assassination attempt on the president's life during his forthcoming trip to Texas. Mr. Maynard stated that he has no recollection whatever of receiving or seeing any such teletype or other communication containing this message. He remarked that had such a message been received by him, he most certainly would have some recollection of it. He also stated he has no recollection of receiving a message by telephone or by any other means from William S. Walter during the morning of November 17, 63, following receipt of this alleged communication, informing him of its content. Further, Mr. Maynard stated that he did not instruct any of his special agent personnel during the morning of November 17th, following the receipt of this alleged communication, to alert informants in the New Orleans area regarding a possible assassination attempt on the president. Well, that's not quite what he said. Basically, he wanted his agents to connect with all their confidential informants and potential confidential informants and see if they had any information regarding this assassination attempt. Mr. Maynard was asked whether he can recall receiving or seeing any communication from FBI headquarters instructing the various special agents of the New Orleans FBI office who conducted interviews concerning the assassination of President Kennedy to examine their interview reports to make sure there were no conflicts contained in them, and whether the special agents were ordered to resolve any such conflicts by preparing new reports and destroying the old reports. Mr. Maynard replied that at no time had he instructed special agent personnel participating in the investigation of President's assassination to change or alter in any way or destroy investigative reports concerning interviews conducted in connection with this matter or subjects connected with this matter. This allegation, Mr. Maynard stated, is unequivocally false. All right, then. So, in January of 1969, right? Let's see who wrote this. Who wrote this? Okay, Louis Lecoeur, the United States Attorney from the Eastern District of Louisiana, New Orleans, to a Mr. William S. Block, attorney of the General Crimes Section, Criminal Division, Department of Justice, Washington, D.C., regarding William S. Walter. Dear Mr. Block, in response to Mr. Belker's letter of January 1769, the following is a summary of an interview we had with William Walter, who had accompanied by his attorney Guy Wooten on October 28, 68. Present at this interview was also my first assistant, Dean Tomasano. Walter stated that he went on duty as security patrol clerk in New Orleans office at midnight, beginning his 8-hour tour of duty for November 17th or 18th. My notes are not clear here. Relieving Tom Bevins, who worked the 3:45 to 12 a.m. shift. Walter indicated that in the late evening hours of Mr. Bevins' shift, a coded teletype was received, and due to the press of getting out the day's mail, Bevins did not attempt to decode the teletype but left it for Walter, when he came on at midnight. Walter said that he took the teletype upon coming on duty, went to the safe and got the code drum for that day and placed same in the decoding machine and decoded the teletype, it coming from the machine on sticker tape. He stated that he took the sticker tape and arranged it on a page and then typed the message, placing the original teletype and the tape copy in the safe and placing the original and carbon copy of the typed copy of the message on the desk of the Secretary of the SAC. His memory of the contents of the teletype was that an assassination attempt would be made on President Kennedy's life when he made his trip to Texas. Walter recalls that the initials of the sender of the teletype were HLF. He stated that this was a conference type message going to a number of cities. He does not specifically recall the conversation with the then SAC, Harry Maynard, but feels certain that he did contact him. He stated he is sure he also contacted agents who worked at informants and stated he is sure he would have contacted the following agents. And of course, they are redacted, but we know who they are, as I've read it before. So, when questioned as to the other persons who may have seen the teletype, Walter stated that Thomas McCurley, who was then a supply clerk with the FBI and who did special duty on the teletype the night of the assassination, discussed on the night of the assassination the teletype which was in the file. Walter claims that McCurley definitely saw the teletype and questioned him as to whether or not Walter contacted the right people when the teletype was received. Walter was most emphatic that McCurley definitely saw the teletype. He went on further to say that about 2 months after the assassination, he, Walter, Roy Simon, a night clerk with the FBI, and McCurley searched the file for the teletype and were unable to find it. Another person, Otis Page, a supply clerk employed by the FBI at the time, may have seen the teletype, although Walter isn't sure that he did, but is certain that he discussed the teletype with him at the time. Another person employed by the FBI was John Chancellor, and Walter states that he may have also had knowledge of the teletype, but he is not sure. Walter stated that about 6 months after the assassination, an airtel was received by the Bureau requesting certain serials be forwarded from the assassination file to the Bureau in D.C. Walter definitely remembers the conversation with S.A. Redacted, who at the time was stationed in Bogalusa and who came into New Orleans late one night after he, Walter, called the informant agents after receipt of the teletype. Walter said that his former wife, Karen Johnson, who was also employed by the Bureau at the time of President Kennedy's assassination, had knowledge of the teletype as he discussed it with her. On the night of the Johnny Carson show, when Garrison mentioned Walter and the teletype, Walter said his former wife phoned him and asked him what he was going to do, whereupon he said he was going to retain a lawyer and cooperate with the Bureau. So there, folks, is, I guess, now we have the catalyst, the reason that Walter voluntarily went to the FBI in 1968 and gave that statement. It was because Garrison called him out on the Tonight Show. And speculating as to where Mark Lane or Garrison may have acquired information as to the existence of such a teletype, Walker stated that one possibility would be that Clay Shaw hired the Wackenhut firm to do the investigation for him. He said the two former agents, redacted and redacted, as well as his former wife, were employees of Wackenhut at the time Shaw hired this firm for investigation purposes. Walter said that the teletype should be serial number 1 and file 89.69.redacted. Other files containing material in the assassination are 100-161, which Walter designated as an internal security file, and 2 other numbers are in my notes, and it's not clear what they indicate, but those numbers are 105 and 69. 69. McCurley's roommate at the time of the assassination was Joe Coleman, who, according to Walter, is still employed by the Bureau. Walter's home address at the time of the interview was redacted. Yours, Louis Lacour, United States Attorney. So I think they were doing all this at the time to kind of cover their bases. And, just in case Garrison subpoenaed Walter to testify under oath about what he saw, um, that they could have their story straight and make sure that Maynard was on the record saying that he doesn't remember any of this. So very interesting. So at this point, Garrison doesn't subpoena him. That information is really not used by Garrison in his investigation of Clay Shaw. And, the matter kind of goes away for a little while until 1975 and the Church Committee. So fast forward to September of 1975. We have a United States government memorandum to Mr. McDermott from A.C. Frank. Subject, analysis of alleged SAC teletype message dated November 1763. The communications section has thoroughly reviewed the alleged teletype message from FBI headquarters to all SACs captioned Threat to Assassinate President Kennedy in Dallas, Texas, 11/22/63. This analysis assumes that the teletype message appeared exactly as dictated to Nancy Collins, in which case there are numerous inconsistencies, which would indicate that it was contrived or reconstructed from memory. The following is a line-by-line listing of inconsistencies. Line 1. The time and date are in reverse order. There was no teletypist assigned at FBI headquarters in 1963 with the initials HLF. Harry F. Louderback did work the midnight shift at that time and used the initials HFL. However, he cannot recall any details of specific messages handled. Of course he can't. And the terminology one-paged does not belong on line 1 of the format, but should be located in line 3 following from director as 1P. Lines 2 and 3 appear normal, except that 1P should be in line 3 as stated above. Lines 4 and 5. The caption does not appear normal, as it was accepted practice in such cases to use the caption unsub, threat to whatever. And the date would have been spelled out November 22nd, 63, not in numerals. Which it wasn't on the copy that I read from. We'll get to that. Lines 12 and 13. The term bureau could be kept advised of all developments via teletype, would normally have been shortened to read SU-TEL developments. Line 14. The term other offices have been advised appears redundant since the message was directed to all SACs. Line 15. This line should appear end and act TLS. Not. Lines 16 through 19 appear to indicate that this message was transmitted simultaneously to 3 offices, i.e. Mobile, Dallas, and New Orleans, followed by a single acknowledgement indicated by the characters K, KT, TI, TU, CLR. This is inconsistent with the normal sequence of events, since each of the 3 office abbreviations should be followed by a separate acknowledgement consisting of the time. OK FBI, field office abbreviation, and operator's initials. This diagrams KTTI do not correlate to any known teletype terminology. However, the TUCLR meant thank you, clear, and is accepted terminology. The following is an exact representation of how the message should have appeared with appropriate format and terminology used in bureau messages at that time. So, and then they go to give an example of what the teletype should have looked like as opposed to how Walter said that it appeared. The possibility exists that if the original copy of the alleged message were reviewed, it would be found that the errors in format were attributable to the dictation. Further, although the above reflects normal practices which were strictly adhered to at the time, it is not inconceivable that a series of coincidences could have resulted in a message similar to that presented. Action for information only. Information only. So, we have now another memorandum from the United States government to a Mr. Wanall from J.G. Deegan. Purpose of this memorandum is to provide comments regarding an analysis of the alleged teletype from the director to all SACs dated 11/17/63. This is from September 25th, 1975. The following comments are submitted with respect to this document. 1. In 1963, then existing procedures called for spelling out dates rather than abbreviating them. 2. It is likely that an authentic teletype would have contained the full name of President Kennedy in the title. 3. Terminology such as information has been received by the Bureau appears awkward and is not in keeping with Bureau terminology. 4. But I'm pretty sure I've seen that in many, many FBI documents before, but okay. 4. Instructions contained in this teletype requested contact with CIs, PCIs, logical, radical, and hate group informants. Security informants and potential security informants should have logically been included were omitted. Teletype request submission of FD 302s. This request is an unusual one, as informants are not normally required or requested to submit such forms. 6. The last sentence, other offices have been advised, appears awkward as the teletype is addressed to all SACs. Action none for information. More ass covering, folks. From September 26, 1960, or 1920, no, shit. September 26, 1975. Let's get it right, Rob. Okay. 2. Then Director of the FBI. From Special Agent in Charge, Ted Gunderson. Maybe you've heard of him. On November 25th, 75, redacted, Dallas, Texas, advised they wish to be as cooperative as possible with the FBI. However, because of their positions, they requested the following information be maintained in the strictest of confidence. Under no circumstances will they testify as to what they have furnished as data to the FBI for verification of information only. I, Ted Gunderson, granted, redacted, an express promise of confidentiality per their request as to the information they furnished me and as to their identity. Redacted, a former FBI clerk in New Orleans, Louisiana, who claims while on duty, the FBI office that city, a teletype was forwarded by FBI headquarters to all SACs. This teletype reportedly claimed a militant revolutionary group may attempt to assassinate President Kennedy in Dallas on November 22nd. They refused to identify this ex-FBI clerk by name. Redacted, this former FBI clerk on one or several occasions furnished information as follows. And by the way, you know what Ted Gunderson's initials are? PLG. Just like the lone gunman. Just a cool side there. Number 1, there was such a teletype. Number 2, he removed this teletype from FBI files, New Orleans, Louisiana. 3, he typed a copy from the original while in the FBI office. Number 4, he is presently under his control, the original He has presently under his control the original of this document, which he took from the FBI files. Pay attention to that, what I just read you. He has presently under his control the original of this document, which he took from the FBI files. Number 5, his lawyer in Louisiana has a Xerox copy of this reported teletype. 6, the original copy of this reported teletype is in a lockbox somewhere in the vicinity of New Orleans, Louisiana. And then there is a big redacted paragraph. And then he prefers the FBI determine the location of the town directly from the ex-FBI clerk and stated he feels the ex-FBI clerk will provide this information if asked. Redacted, the ex-clerk advised him he was on duty at the FBI New Orleans office on the night of the assassination, and after the teletype, which was directed to all SACs, was received by New Orleans, he made handwritten notes from the original teletype and then typed up a copy on FBI paper. Redacted, the following is a verbatim copy of this teletype, which I've read numerous times here. So we'll skip over. This ex-FBI clerk explained that on the reported original of this teletype in the lower right-hand corner were penciled the names as follows: Debris, Wall, Cock, Maynard, Gilmore. This ex-clerk informed him these names were written on the reported original teletype to indicate that all 5 had been notified of receipt of this teletype by the New Orleans division that night. To the best of that clerk's memory, they were all notified within 45 minutes of the time that teletype was received by the New Orleans office. The ex-clerk told him subsequent to receipt of the teletype, he removed this reported original teletype from the 620 file of the New Orleans office, but could not find a copy of it in a substantive case file. So, quite obvious to me that Ted Gunderson is referring directly to William Walter. Yet he had been talking to 2 other people who had been employed at the FBI at the time. So that's kind of interesting corroboration there. And also the information that William Walter is sitting on the original FBI teletype, which will come up later. So pay attention. October the 2nd, 1975. Church Committee document here. United States government memorandum regarding Mr. J.B. Adams. On September the 30th, 1975, Deputy Associate Director, Assistant to the Director, James B. Adams met with Chairman Peter Rodino, House Committee on the Judiciary, and Chairman Don Edwards, House Committee on Civil and Constitutional Rights, to brief the chairman on certain allegations that have been made regarding the Bureau's investigation of the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. Also present at this meeting were Inspector John Hodis, Earl Dudley, Chief Counsel, House Judiciary Committee, and Alan Parker, Chief Counsel, House Subcommittee on Civil and Constitutional Rights. Mr. Adams also discussed the allegations made by William S. Walter, a former clerical employee of the Bureau, who claims that a teletype was sent to all FBI field offices, alerting them to the possibility of an attempt would be made to assassinate President Kennedy on 11/22/63. Mr. Adams pointed out that this allegation was thoroughly investigated by the Bureau in 1968. Yes, we have all that. We've been through all that. And no evidence was developed to support it. Okay. A comprehensive review has been made of all FBI files, and there is no record of any such teletype. Of course, there's not going to be an official record of it at FBI headquarters. Are you kidding me? He said that when Mr. Walter was first interviewed in this matter by the special agent in charge of the Jacksonville office, that he denied having made this statement or having seen such a teletype, and that he later changed his story and told other officials he had seen such a teletype and had probably notified his special agent in charge. Mr. Adams said that a polygraph examination of Mr. Walter was inconclusive, although one examiner stated that there was some indications of deception. Wow. Okay, so there's a lot of back talking bullshit in that one sentence there. Let's reread that. Mr. Adams, okay, said that a polygraph examination of Mr. Walter was inconclusive. Okay. Although one, that is precluding there's more than one examiner stated that there was some indications of deception. To what? The entire test, or one question, or three questions, or what? And where is this polygraph examination done on William Walter? And where is the Jacksonville interview? He said it is not possible at this time to determine whether this is a hoax or whether Mr. Walter sincerely believes that such a teletype exists. He said Mr. Walter may have in mind a teletype that was sent to all field offices after the assassination, requesting that all logical sources be contacted in this matter and the Bureau be promptly advised. Okay. So now they're saying that he may just be confused here, with another teletype. Okay. Sure thing, Mr. Adams. Sure thing. In December of 75, apparently uh, CBS News interviewed Warren DeBreeze as part of a, I guess, investigative special on the JFK assassination. And they also interviewed William S. Walter. This letter is from December 10th to CBS News. Dear Ms. Herbst, in answer to your request, we are pleased to send you a transcript of our CBS Reports broadcast in which you were interested. This transcript is being sent to you for your reference and review use only, and no part of it may be published without the written permission of the CBS Law Department. Thank you for your interest in our broadcast. Sincerely yours, May Dow, Director of Special Projects, and Ms. Deborah Herbst was on the Select Committee on Intelligence Activities at the time. Now, this transcript that she requested goes a little something like this. Paul, what was your relationship with him? DeBreeze. He was an individual that I recall having contacted perhaps as many as a dozen times, I suppose, during the early 60s prior to the assassination of President Kennedy. And what we're talking about here is Horace Pena. Okay. Paul. Horace Pena says that he was, in the literal sense, an informer for the FBI, that he knew you well because you were his contact man with the FBI, and that on numerous occasions he saw you and Lee Harvey Oswald together, and in particular in a Greek restaurant in New Orleans in the French Quarter. What's your response to that, Breeze? My response to that is that he is wrong in his statements. I have never seen Lee Harvey Oswald at any time in my life personally, nor have I talked to him by telephone knowingly. I've had absolutely no contact, no personal knowledge, first-hand contact with Lee Harvey Oswald, nor do I have any secondary contact with him. Paul, was Lee Harvey Oswald an informant of the FBI? DeBreeze, he was not my informant. I have no information whatsoever that he had ever been an informant for the FBI. Paul, did you ever use the phrase to get your ass or threaten arrest Pena in any way in connection with his Warren Commission testimony? Breeze, I certainly can't recall ever having made that statement to arrest Pena. My recollection is that I treated him with a great deal of patience and with due respect. There would have been no reason whatsoever for me to have made such a statement to him. Rather, William Walter was an FBI security code clerk in the New Orleans office of the FBI from 1961 until 1966. He told me about Oswald and the FBI. Do you think Oswald was, by your definition, and by the Bureau's definition, an informant? William Walter. Yes, I'm sure he was. Rather. Are you certain, on the basis of what you did in the normal course of your duties, that Oswald's name was on the New Orleans FBI Office Security Index file? Walter. I'm positive. Debris. I would say that's a falsehood. Had he been an informant, and I had him as a subject of my investigation, it would have been logical that I would have been aware of that fact, because of cross references in the file, and for many other reasons. And I say that, sir, is a falsehood. Right. Gotcha. Now, up to this point, William Walter had always been pro FBI. On the FBI side of things, he was just trying to tell his truth. Some people, no matter their loyalties, want to tell the truth, even if it means that they're going to get in trouble because of it. Now, many times under oath, and even under alleged lie detector tests and all this jazz, did Walter tell his story about the teletype. But that wasn't the only story that he had to tell. And in with the last kind of interview with CBS News, I read concerning whether or not Debris was running Oswald as well as folks like Arrest Pena. Of course, by the time of the House Select Committee on Assassinations, they definitely wanted to talk to William S. Walter. And while I don't have the entire transcript, I do have a part of the transcript relating to another crucial piece of information that William Walter shared with the HSCA, not involving the teletype, but more of with the New Orleans office of the FBI in general. So, up to this point, like I said, he's all been pro FBI, even though the FBI won't have his back. They deny this teletype. They got his boss to deny this teletype. They cite random lie detector tests and other interviews in which Walter supposedly said contrary to things to his later depositions, but we don't have those. So could we take the word of the FBI, who has everything to lose in this, or are we going to take the word of William Walter, who the only thing he has to lose really is his credibility? What benefits him from making up this information? It makes the FBI look like shit if they did receive a teletype 5 days before the assassination. It makes them look really incompetent and guilty of not doing their due diligence to protect the president. And what exactly information did they have? I mean, this is just a general drop. It had to come from somewhere. So let's move on to William Walter's HSCA testimony. Walter, your question of whether or not I have any knowledge concerning Lee Harvey Oswald's being an informant, or what knowledge I have of Lee Oswald before the assassination, is that I was on duty Saturday morning in November or October when Oswald requested to be interviewed by an FBI agent. Yensman, could you be speaking of August 1963? Walter, yes, I'm not sure. It was sometime before the assassination, though. He had been arrested by the New Orleans Police Department during I believe it was a picketing of a Fair Play for Cuba committee, or he was involved in the Fair Play for Cuba committee. He requested an agent to interview him at the police department, and Gensman interrupts. An agent? Walter, yes. An agent Quigley handed me a memorandum with Lee Harvey Oswald's name on it and asked me to check the indexes and determine whether or not there was a file or files on that named individual in the New Orleans office. I recall searching the indexes and finding a card that showed more than one file number, which would indicate we had more than one case, not necessarily meaning that the cases were on active investigation, but that sometime during the New Orleans office inquiry into Oswald, there were cases that his name appeared in other than one file. When I searched, now this makes sense because before Quigley would have went down to the New Orleans Police Department and spoken with Oswald, he would definitely want to know who he was talking to. So he definitely would have asked a file clerk to go pull any files relating to Lee Harvey Oswald. Check this guy out before he went down and talked to him. So back to Walter. When I searched for these files in the normal filing area of the Bureau, which was in an open bay filing cabinet, the files were not there. From looking at the numbers, they fell in the category. Looking at the file numbers, they fell into the category of security type, informant type files with a 105 classification and 134 classification. I gave the memorandum with the notation of the file numbers we had in our indexes back to Agent Quigley, and that is the last I heard or the last time I was interested in seeing any information about Oswald until after the assassination. It was after the assassination that I was curious and went back to look up to see what the files would indicate that had been done by the New Orleans office to Oswald. Curious as to whether or not our office had an ongoing investigation before the assassination. What I found was a file in the special agent in charge's safe or his locked file cabinet. I don't recall the file number, but I recall on the jacket of the file, Special Agent Warren DeBreeze's name. I want to make a point that I only found one file, even though, as I recall, there were more files listed that our office had that had Oswald's name referenced in them. I also need to make a distinction that just because an individual would have his name in the indexes and the file number would not necessarily mean that that file was, that the individual was the subject on that file. He could have just been interviewed and an interview sheet put in the file. In that case, the page number would be listed next to the file number to show the serial that the individual had in that file. In Oswald's case, it showed that there were more than one file assigned, number assigned to him. Yensman, would it be fair to say that these indexes, which indicated these file numbers, would not indicate whether not indicate whether the files were active or pending, but they were in fact files on Oswald for these particular categories, either in the past or in the present? Walter, that is correct. The indexes only showed what files were in the New Orleans office, not whether or not they were active or closed. Yensman, with reference to the file on which Special Agent DeBreeze's name appeared, did you at that time identify that file as being a security informant file as opposed to some other type of file? Walter, I can't recall what file jacket I looked at. It was either a 105 or a 134. Don't really know. I could not in 1968 when I was asked, could not remember then either. Yensman, do you know of any FBI employees who developed Oswald as an informant or a confidential source of information. Now, let's pause here for a second, because when I read you those internal FBI memorandum concerning Walter's 1968 interview, remember that it was only about the teletype. It was never about the Oswald files. They were never mentioned in those internal FBI documents. But right here, Walter tells you, I could not in 1968, when I was asked, could not remember then either, which is interesting. So, again, do you know of any FBI employees who developed Oswald as an informant or a confidential source? Walter, I don't have any firsthand knowledge other than what I saw on the jacket, the name that I saw on the jacket of the file, Warren Debris. I know employees of the FBI that should have knowledge of Oswald being involved, either as an informant or a security investigation, and these were agents that were in the position and assigned to these categories within the New Orleans jurisdiction. Gensman, can you name anyone who would substantiate the allegation that Oswald was an FBI informant? Walter, I don't know of anyone that would, but I can give you the names of some that should know. Ernest Wall, Milton Cott, Warren Debris. That is all that comes to my mind. Gensman, Mr. Walter, I would like next to ask you questions concerning a teletype which you allegedly received at the FBI field office, da 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 da. And he goes on to talk about, yes, I received a teletype, blah, 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 blah. So the story of William Walter takes a dramatic turn there at the end. It would appear that the informant files or any security or investigative files on Oswald in New Orleans in 1963 had disappeared. Disappeared. Of course they would. Whoever would have wanted this information deep sixed if the FBI had any contact at all with Lee Harvey Oswald. You can bet your bottom dollar those files were burned, destroyed, bombed, deep sixed, set on fire, nuked, whatever you want to call it, shredded, and Dunsky, same with this teletype. It would have made the Bureau look very, very badly. And had they had any prior contact before the assassination with Lee Harvey Oswald in New Orleans, especially if he had been a confidential or paid informant to the FBI, that would look real bad, like real, real bad. So you better believe you will never, ever see those documents. But then again, that's not quite the end of the story. Curiously enough, like the story is not weird enough as it is. But to cap it all off, folks, and I don't even know what to make of this, but here we go. And this is a FBI airtell to the director from the SAC in New Orleans. And this is from January 2nd, 1978. On December the 29th, 1978, Mr. Leo Herbert, the Office Services Manager of the New Orleans Division FBI, advised there are no records existing from which information can be retrieved to substantiate attendance on duty of former Security Patrol Clerk William S. Walter in the New Orleans office on August the 10th, 1963. So again, they're trying to discredit William S. Walter by saying we don't know if he was at work or not that day when he went to check on these records, the Oswald's records for Agent Quigley, before he went down to see Oswald at the jail. So, there you have it, folks. The strange, dramatic story told to us by William Walter, told under oath many times to the HSCA, the Church Committee, the FBI. This was a guy who was on the FBI side, who worked for the FBI from 1961 to 1966. But he wanted to tell his truth, that this is what happened. So we should call William S. Walter an unsung hero of the Kennedy assassination investigation. Because if what he says is true, it did not look good for our United States government. That's for damn sure.
President Kennedy died at 1 p.m.
That's it for this week, folks. Another one in the bag just for you, beamed up to the satellite, down directly to your ears, people. This is your boy. Follow along on Twitter and TikTok at The Lone Gunman 7. Facebook, search for The Lone Gunman Facebook page. YouTube, search for The Lone Gunman Podcast YouTube channel. Make sure to like, subscribe, and share. And feel free to leave a giant 5-star review on iTunes for your boy. It helps get some seen. And get yourself some goddamn hot sauce, people. What's wrong with you? Fire up those taste buds. And let's rock the fuck.
Biggie bit that killed JFK. President